The fallout from Disney's Snow White remake has reached unprecedented levels of disaster, just as many industry watchers predicted. What's happening now is exactly what cynics expected. Hollywood executives and cast members are circling like vultures, ready to place the blame squarely on Rachel Zegler's shoulders for the film's catastrophic performance. There's no doubt that she drove the final nail into this movie's coffin. She probably drove the final 2 or 3 nails into the coffin. I think Rachel Zegler was miscast. I'm not trying to be shady, but when you see the pictures of her as Snow White, you're like, that's Snow White. What was she? Like, she doesn't look happy. She's not really smiling. Let's dive into what's unfolding. A recent Variety article exposed the behind-the-scenes drama. Beginning surprisingly with Zegler's social media activity last August, shortly after Disney's D23 event, Zegler posted an Instagram video supporting Palestine that garnered around 9 million views. According to Variety, Disney executives were utterly shocked by this unauthorized political statement. The studio's reaction was swift and severe. Mark Platt, a major producer behind Snow White, reportedly flew to New York specifically to confront Zegler, demanding she remove the pro-Palestine content from her social media. What's particularly explosive about this situation is that Galadoo, who plays the evil queen, is Israeli, creating an extremely volatile dynamic between the film's 2 leads. Variety sources claim Zegler has been difficult for producers to manage since her West Side Story days, her very first major role that won her a Golden Globe. The publication also reported that Zegler's Palestine comments allegedly triggered death threats against Gaza, forcing Disney to beef up security during promotional events. One insider told Variety she didn't understand the repercussions of her actions as far as what that meant for the film, for Gal, for anyone. This hit piece seemed calculated to shift the entire blame for Snow White's failure onto Zegler's political statements. But here's where things get even more complicated. Zegler's Palestine comments weren't her only controversial statements. After Donald Trump won the recent election, she posted a scathing Instagram message expressing her devastation about the result. She wrote that she finds herself speechless, facing another 4 years of hatred, and declared that Trump supporters never know peace. In essence, Zegler managed to alienate potential audiences across the political spectrum in one swift move. She upset conservative viewers with her anti-Trump stance while simultaneously angering some liberal circles with her Palestine comments. The film was already facing criticism for its departure from the original story. But these controversies created the perfect storm. The numbers don't lie about how badly this has hurt the film. Snow White currently sits at an abysmal 1.8 out of 10 user score, even lower than the universally panned Dragon Ball Evolution. The box office returns are equally catastrophic. The film opened worldwide to just $82 million, a devastating figure for a production that reportedly cost between $250 and $350 million to make. For perspective, Snow White performed $34 million worse than Joker Folio, which was itself considered a major box office disappointment. Adding insult to injury, Variety reports that Snow White actually cost $70 million more to produce than the Joker sequel. An executive from a competing studio didn't mince words about the disaster. You can't say that a live-action remake of the most iconic film in the vault that cost $270 million and has been red-hot multiple times opening to $50 million is okay. The math does not work. That movie should be a billion-dollar movie. They're absolutely right. Even with mediocre reviews, a controversy-free Snow White remake should have been an automatic blockbuster. This is the film that built Disney's empire. For it to fail so spectacularly means heads will inevitably roll throughout the organization. Some observers have pointed out an apparent double standard in how the 2 leads were treated. While Zegler was allegedly reprimanded for her Palestine comments, GDAU made her own statements about the Israel-Hamas conflict without facing similar consequences. This has led to accusations of inconsistent rules applying to different stars based on their position on the issue. The Variety report goes further, suggesting Zegler had already been problematic well before the Palestine controversy. Apparently, during production of Snow White, she publicly complained about not being invited to the 2022 Oscars despite starring in Best Picture nominee West Side Story. According to sources, she was supposed to be filming in London, and Disney executives initially declined to release her for the ceremony. After her public complaints, the Academy provided her with a ticket. This portrayal of Zegler as difficult and entitled since the beginning has raised eyebrows among her supporters. The narrative suggests she exhibited ingratitude towards Steven Spielberg, the legendary director who discovered her and launched her career with West Side Story. The implication is clear. She was handed a golden ticket to stardom that most aspiring actors would kill for, yet seemingly couldn't appreciate the opportunity. The messaging around this controversy frames Zegler as someone who failed to maintain humility in the face of sudden success. Industry veterans often advise newcomers that Hollywood success is fleeting and heavily dependent on maintaining positive relationships with powerful producers and executives. By publicly challenging Disney and making controversial political statements, Zegler allegedly broke this unwritten rule. Interestingly, some social media users have pointed out that Zegler previously criticized Gina Carano when she was fired from The Mandalorian over her controversial statements in 2020. Zegler apparently attempted to position herself as morally superior at that time, but now finds herself in an arguably worse position than Carano ever faced. It's a stark reminder that public opinion can shift rapidly and today's moral high ground might become tomorrow's quicksand. Despite all this negative press, public sentiment towards Zegler appears to be shifting somewhat. Many social media users have begun defending her, praising her for standing by her principles despite pressure from powerful Hollywood figures. One viral tweet commended her backbone and integrity at 23 for refusing to delete her Palestine post, even when confronted by one of Hollywood's most influential producers. Others have expressed sympathy for her situation, suggesting that at just 23 years old, she was too inexperienced to understand the potential consequences of her political statements. Some argue she's being scapegoated for a film that was destined to fail regardless of controversy due to fundamental creative issues and audience fatigue with Disney remakes. However, critics of this perspective point out that 23 is well into adulthood and someone in such a high-profile position should understand the potential ramifications of their public statements. They argue that trying to portray Zegler as too young to know better infantilizes her and removes her agency. After all, she consciously chose to write and post her political views knowing she was the face of a major Disney project. The fallout from this controversy will likely have long-lasting effects on Zegler's career. Hollywood operates very much like a risk-averse high school social hierarchy where association with controversial figures can damage one's own prospects. Major studios and fellow actors may be hesitant to work with someone who has been labeled as difficult or potentially damaging to a project's commercial prospects. Disney's reaction to the Snow White disaster has been telling. Reports indicate crews have already begun removing Snow White promotional materials from locations in California despite the film having just been released. This unusually quick dismantling suggests the studio has already written off the project as a loss and is eager to distance itself from the failure. Looking forward, industry analysts predict that studios may start including more restrictive social media clauses in contracts with actors, explicitly prohibiting political statements during promotional periods. 2. The days of studios allowing stars complete freedom to express political views while representing multi-million-dollar projects may be coming to an end. The relationship between Zegler and Gidel has reportedly deteriorated as well. According to sources, they are no longer on speaking terms with tensions escalating after Zegler allegedly referred to Gidel as a professional pageant queen during an Oscars event. This comment apparently angered Dow, creating an unbridgeable rift between the film's two leads. For Disney, Snow White represents yet another costly box office disappointment. In recent years, the film will struggle to reach even $200 million worldwide, resulting in a massive financial loss for the studio. This comes at a particularly challenging time for Disney, which has faced several underperforming releases and growing criticism that it has lost touch with what audiences want. The most revealing aspect of this entire Snow White debacle might be how quickly Hollywood is ready to discard talented individuals who don't play by unwritten rules. Some industry observers have noted that the most successful long-term actors in Hollywood tend to either avoid social media entirely or have their accounts managed by professional PR teams. Stars like Elizabeth Olsen and Samuel Jackson have maintained longevity partly by keeping their personal opinions relatively private or carefully managed. This approach makes business sense. When you're the face of projects worth hundreds of millions of dollars, expressing polarizing views can alienate substantial portions of your potential audience. Even if someone receives tens of thousands of supportive likes on social media for controversial statements, those supporters often don't translate into actual ticket sales. As Snow White's box office clearly demonstrates, the situation has prompted discussions about the increasingly politicized nature of entertainment. Many viewers report growing weary of movies and TV shows that feel like vehicles for political messaging rather than storytelling. And this fatigue crosses political lines. People from various backgrounds express wanting entertainment that unites rather than divides. For Zegler specifically, the path forward appears challenging. She might become a symbol of resistance to some, celebrated for standing by her principles regardless of professional consequences. However, this admiration likely won't translate into the kind of major studio roles that launched her career. Instead, industry analysts predict she might find herself relegated to smaller productions or supporting roles, perhaps as the best friend to the main character rather than the lead. More concerning for young actors is the psychological toll such public downfalls can take. Going from being celebrated as the next big star to becoming a cautionary tale can trigger significant mental health challenges. A sudden loss of status, opportunities, and public goodwill often leads to depression and anxiety, especially for someone experiencing it at a young age. The most striking element of this controversy is how it exposes the contradictions within Hollywood's public image. The industry presents itself as progressive and values-driven. Yet, the business realities often tell a different story. Studios want stars who appear authentic and principled to audiences while remaining commercially viable and non-controversial behind the scenes. An increasingly difficult balance to maintain in our polarized media landscape. Disney's reaction to the Snow White failure could signal a shift in how studios manage talent going forward. The days of allowing stars complete freedom of expression while representing major franchises may be ending. More restrictive social media clauses and contracts could become standard, explicitly prohibiting political statements during promotional periods for major releases. What makes this situation particularly complex is that neither side appears entirely consistent in their position. Disney has previously been accused of selectively applying standards regarding which political statements they find acceptable from their talent. Meanwhile, audiences who claim to support artists' freedom of expression often abandon that principle when the expressions contradict their own views. The most telling sign that Snow White is considered unsalvageable comes from Disney itself. Reports indicate promotional materials are already being removed from public spaces despite the film having just been released. When studios begin dismantling marketing campaigns this quickly, it signals they've already written off the project and are eager to distance themselves from the failure. For Disney, this represents yet another costly misstep in recent years. While the studio once seemed invincible with its Marvel, Star Wars, and live-action remake strategies, audience fatigue and increased competition have eroded its market dominance. Snow White was supposed to be a safe bet, a remake of the film that built the Disney empire, making its failure all the more concerning for shareholders. The broader lesson from this controversy might be about the changing relationship between celebrities and audiences. In the social media age, stars have unprecedented platforms to share their personal views. But this access comes with significant risks. The most successful performers increasingly recognize that maintaining some mystery and separation between their public and private personas serves their career longevity. As one industry insider reportedly summarized, audiences want to be entertained, not lectured. They'll forgive mediocre content before they'll forgive feeling disrespected. This sentiment appears to cross political divides, with viewers from various backgrounds expressing exhaustion with entertainment that feels more like activism than storytelling. For aspiring actors watching this situation unfold, the takeaway seems clear. In an industry where thousands of talented people compete for every opportunity, giving executives any reason to choose someone else is a risky strategy. The path to sustained success.